Hey guys, Redneck Mini 14 here. A little while ago I posted a video talking about ranch rifles, specifically ranch rifles when it comes to horseback riding. And one of my talking points, well, my main talking point was the fact that I do believe that the Ruger Mini 30 is just the best all-around modern-day ranch rifle, and I still believe in that. But the reason I made that video was because it might not necessarily be the best ranch rifle when it comes to horseback riding. It's good for, ATVs, UTVs, pickup trucks, or just walking around on foot, but not necessarily horseback riding. And I gave my explanation as to why that is. And one of the things that I was talking about was capacity and why one gun may be better than another gun because it has, holds a few more rounds. And somebody actually commented on that video basically telling me that, I clearly have never ridden a horse before, which isn't true. I've ridden horses many times in my life. I don't know anything about ranching because, this, that, and the other. And basically was saying, ranchers don't really think about capacity the way you do, blah, blah, blah. It kind of just sounded like a FUD if you ask me. But the question is, when it comes to ranch rifles, does capacity matter? Now, when it comes to combat rifles or home defense rifles or, basically any other type of rifle, except for maybe a hunting rifle, yes, I would say capacity matters because having more rounds gives you more chances to stop that threat, right? And we're talking about human beings when it comes to defense most of the time. And a lot of times, another human being also has another weapon of their own, whether that's a gun or a knife or a baseball bat or whatever. And so, yes, when it comes to defensive rifles or even offensive rifles, like, if you're in the military or, if you're in a war or something and you have an offensive rifle, yes, capacity does matter. Absolutely. Nobody gets into a gunfight and thinks to themselves, man, I wish I had fewer rounds. Nobody does it. That just doesn't happen. And I really think that ranch rifles are kind of the same way. Now, it's not exactly the same thing because, yes, you could have an animal attack you or your livestock. But generally speaking, that bear or that wolf or whatever from a far distance away isn't shooting back at you. They don't have a gun to shoot back at you with. And so usually, not all the time, but usually you have a little more time to get your rounds on target. But that's not always the case. And so I personally feel like capacity does matter, but not necessarily as much. Now, what I mean by that is you don't necessarily have to have an AR-15 with 30 rounds to be your ranch rifle. I don't personally think that you will ever need 30 rounds to stop whatever threat. And 223 is really not generally the round that I would use anyway, which is why I like the Ruger Mini 30, because it's a 7.62x39. It's a 30 caliber. It's a little extra power, and I say I like the Ruger Mini 30 because it has you can get a good reliable 20 round magazine. 20 rounds, even 20 rounds, I think is probably more than you'll ever need. But I would rather have the 20 rounds and not need it than need it and not have it. But again, I don't necessarily think you'll ever need that many rounds. But let's drop the round count down a little more, and then capacity, I think, would matter quite a bit more. So, I've got three guns here. This is a Stoeger, a Stoeger Coach Gun Supreme 12-gauge double-barrel shotgun. Awesome shotgun. Joe Biden's favorite shotgun. Well, his favorite style of shotgun, I should say. We have a Marlin 1895 4570. This is a 1895 ABL. That's the exact model this is. And then we have a Henry big boy steel model in 45 Colt. So we have 2 rounds, 6+1 and 10+1. So, another thing you have to consider with capacity is power. So, 12 gauge, good, powerful round. You do have a wide variety of rounds to shoot. You can have birdshot, buckshot, slugs, any number of rounds you can fire through this, but you only have 2 shots, and you do have 2 triggers with this one as well. So under pressure, you might not necessarily think to get the other trigger. Not all double barrel shotguns have double triggers, but a lot of them do, this one included. So that's one thing to keep in mind, but mainly what we're talking about is the fact that you only have 2 rounds, and being that this is an internal hammer gun, you do not have external hammers on this. It actually is quite a bit harder to open this than it is just a regular external hammer shotgun. So it takes a little more force. It takes a little more force to open it up, but it's not too bad. And of course, it gets slicker over time. But, if you miss with your first 2 shots, or the first 2 shots don't do the job, it takes a little time to reload. And in a lot of instances, I would say that 2 rounds might not necessarily do the job. You might have more than one animal, like a pack of wolves or a pack of coyotes or whatever. You might have more than one animal to deal with. You might miss under pressure, yada, yada, yada. So then we go to the 45-70. Now, of course, I think the 45-70, as far as lever actions, I think that's like the king in terms of calibers. I don't necessarily think you'll need anything bigger than a 45-70. Of course, there's like 450 Marlin, which is still like basically the same caliber, but it has a little extra power. But either way, 45 caliber rifle like this is plenty powerful. You have 6 rounds plus 1 in the chamber if you so desire to have that extra round. 6 plus 1, I think, will do the job just fine. In most situations, not necessarily all, but 99.9% of situations that you would ever need a range rifle for, I think a good 45-70 or 30-30 or 35 Remington 444 Marlin, any of those big rifle calibers with 6 or 7 rounds, I think that would be ideal. You got more rounds than 2, and you have a nice powerful round. Now, the other option, which I also think is a good option, and it's maybe even a little more handy. Now this one's about the same length as this particular 45-70, but I feel like more often than not, if you're talking about pistol caliber carbine lever actions like this Henry, this is a 10+1. It has a side loading gate. It also has the tube that you can pull out. But 10+1, I think, is plenty as far as defensive purposes go. This is a 45 Colt. You can get them in 357 Magnum. You can get them in 44 Magnum, 327 Magnum, and 41 Magnum. Those calibers are a little more hard to come by. But, 45 Colt, 44 Magnum, 357 Magnum, 10, 11 rounds of those calibers, I think that's plenty. And they're all perfectly lethal. You can take out bears with them if you absolutely have to. And you have that extra 10, well, not extra 10 rounds, but you have a few extra rounds than you do on this 45-70 right here. So you have a little more margin of error, if you will. And like I said, nobody ever goes into a gunfight or a defensive situation and thinks to themselves, man, I wish I had less ammo. And in this particular case, you have a little bit less powerful of a round, although you can load up 45 Colts and 44 Magnums to be pretty powerful. In fact, you can get them to be not quite as powerful, but just pretty close to being as powerful as some of the lower 45-70 rounds. and that will definitely do the trick. And in basically the same size package with these two, these two examples anyway, you get 4 extra rounds. So yes, I would definitely consider one over the other in terms of capacity and power. You can crank them up to be pretty powerful. So, powerful enough to where I wouldn't think it would matter one way or the other. I think both of them would definitely do the trick. Now, the advantage of the this Henry big boy is some of them you can get them in a little bit shorter barrel length, and you get a little less capacity. But even with that short barrel length, it's still more capacity than this rifle. So with, I think this is an 18.5-inch barrel on this Marlin, you get 6 rounds, but you can get, an 18.5-inch barrel with this Henry, and you'll have, actually it might even be 16 inches, I don't remember, but you can get like 7+1 in one of those rifles. So, you get a smaller gun in size, but you get more rounds still, and still you can have the hotter loaded ammo in it than just your standard 45 Colt Cowboy loads. So to answer the question, yes, I do think capacity matters. I just don't necessarily think that it matters as much as a combat rifle or a home defense rifle or, anything like that, an offensive rifle, etc. But I would most definitely take either one of these guns over this gun to be my ranch rifle or my ranch shotgun. I just think these fit the bill way better than this, no matter what Grandpa Joe says. And now that's not to say that this is a bad gun. This is an excellent gun. But I bought this to be a cowboy action gun and just kind of a fun gun. I did not get this to be a defensive gun or a homesteading gun or anything like that. This is just kind of a fun gun, whereas guns like this would be more working guns and defensive guns, ranch rifles, etc. Guns like this just fit the bill a whole lot better, in my opinion, and that's all I have to say about that.
Hey, before I go, I just thought I'd remind everybody that I do have a second channel called Redneck Off the Range. Over there, I post most of my non-gun related content, so whether it's a video on my new tractor, my power tools, my projects that I'm working on, maybe wild game recipes, or just a random vlog, I post all of this kind of content over on my secondary channel. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, go check it out, Redneck Off the Range. But that's all for this video, so subscribe to my channel, like me on Facebook. I'm Redneck Mini 14, and until next time, be safe.